So welcome to our educational workshop, Beyond Public and Private, and this has been a labor of love. So I'm thanks for being here so we can kind of just share what the Lord has been doing in our context and hopefully just allow you to think through some of these things with us and see what God might have for you all in this specific area, a very important area of our families' lives. Whether we are parents, church leaders, ministry leaders, all of the above. You ready to dive in? Okay. You have Post-it notes. If you didn't get any sticky notes, you're going to want one. Here's my family. If you can see, this is a crew currently, and just a mom, just a mom. My kids are getting big. Our family's growing. One more will be here soon, so we're super excited. One of the things through this whole journey that we've been on as a church, as a family, is that there is no perfect way to do this until we see Jesus in heaven. We will make mistakes. We will get it wrong. We will get maybe some things right, praise the Lord. But even bigger than that, he redeems everything, and he's so much bigger, and he's bigger than my greatest mistakes, as a mom for sure, as a teacher for sure. But is our greatest joy is to see his unending grace and patience unfold as we raise our little crew and see our next generation come. Okay, we're going to do a quick little activity in a minute. Just to kind of give you an overview of where we're going in this presentation. We're going to talk about some biblical foundations for education. We're going to look at the classical approach, just kind of go over the framework. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it. And we're going to talk about what that has meant in our context, in our church, and how we have sought to meet some needs there. And then I will share some of my resources and some next steps and have a time for Q&A after that. Okay, so you have sticky notes. Back to that. When I say the word education, this is like your categories moment, if you know that board game. What is the first thing that comes to mind? So don't overthink it. Just education, write the thing that comes to mind right off the top of your head. If you need sticky notes, they're at the back.
One thing?
One thing, yeah, one word. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to ask for some participation. Can anyone shout out that one word? School.
Teaching. I said learning. Learning.
Yeah.
Discipleship.
Anyone say, sorry?
I said exploring.
Yeah. Anyone say stress? Fear. Yeah, it's good. Yeah. Overwhelming. Dangerous. Okay, on that another Post-it note, I want you to write your context, your lens, if you will. Are you wanting to learn about this because you're interested for your families that you might minister to, for yourself as a parent, for your church as a whole, for your community at large? Like, what lens do you view education through? So that might take a minute to think about. What lens do you view education through? Is it primarily as a parent, church leader, ministry leader, community member? And I'm going to ask you to turn to someone you're sitting next to and kind of share a little bit about that when you're comfortable. I'll give you a couple minutes.
Yeah.
We're just talking about how we view education. Do we view it as a teacher? Do we view it as a parent, a ministry leader, a community member? Okay, because what lens? to share any of those lenses with the group? You can just popcorn it out. What lens are you looking at education through, primarily? Yeah.
Parent, like for my own children,
Yes.
in our homeschool, and also like a leader in our homeschool kind of community,
Yeah.
but also on our children's ministry teams. Like, so how could we do, for our church to
Yeah,
support
absolutely.
parents?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mine will, like, it's just personal. I have sons and I'm except for that's which is terrifying.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I'm the other half of that. And I also, I remember in our old church community, we were discussing potentially doing homeschool within our church community and how that would look. And our kids are all at the same kind of age, so that's how the conversation came up.
Mhm.
So, yeah, but we moved, so this is something different.
Sure.
I'm a mom of 3 grown kids, and I was a teacher in the public board, and we lived up north, and we just moved to Hamilton.
Okay.
And a lot of homeschool families in our church, so just
Yeah.
to see if there's anything that can be done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I run a homeschool co-op at our church, and then as well doing, going to camp, but it's also for me, like, as a homeschool parent, seeing
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I have a husband who's now an elementary school teacher, so we get the community side of things, but I also homeschool our daughters, so we have, the irony is not lost on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then our church has, we just started a homeschool collective this year.
Okay.
With 12 families, so we're looking at kind of expanding that and making it.
Awesome. That's great.
Looking at it from a parent lens, but I was actually surprised the opportunity for outreach through homeschooling that has been presented. We moved less than a year ago, and moving into the area, realizing like to share our priorities and our faith through the experience of homeschooling has really shocked me.
Yeah, that's really cool. Mm-hmm.
My kids are missionaries in Mexico, so looking as a grandparent,
Mhm.
is thinking through with them, once the kids are old enough to go to school, what that
Looks like for them.
And then also in our church, local church context, as a children's ministry director for physical education.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was great. Thanks for sharing. One of the things that I've noticed as I've been kind of working through this and doing my research and as we apply what we're learning is that every lens brings us to a different place when we view education. So if I'm just a parent, what do I want for my children in education? What does that mean for me? Do I want them to be job ready? Do I want them to be able to make friends or handle conflict? Do I want them to be able to enter into a high school and function? Do I want them to be able to enter post-secondary and have all the things that they need? Do I want them to just love Jesus and that's everything else is just going to work out, right? I'm sure we, as parents, we kind of go all through those different emotions and we are thinking, am I doing what I need, the right thing for my kids? In our context, I'm a teacher. He said that. I've been a teacher in the public system forever. We sent our kids to public school, and you've heard this, the salt and light, right? We wanted them to be salt and light. And our lives were church. It was surrounded with them. We didn't really even have that conversation. Someone said, why don't you send your kids to Christian school? And we're saying, because we want our kids to really figure out how to be around non-Christians and figure that out. If you've been in the public system, you know in the past 10 years, it's done a this, right? COVID didn't help. Our kids are all about 3 years apart, and by the time our son Austin graduated high school, and by the time our daughter graduated high school, it was an entirely different landscape. And we're all lovers of opportunity and, sharing the gospel in different ways, and that's fantastic. But it became unsafe for her. She was actively cyberbullied, and horrible things were done to her locker and just all kinds of things. The Lord really protected her. She's a firecracker, And that was not going to do anything to her. She was like, let me get on that Easter announcement and talk about Jesus. And she fought the principal till she could get that happening. So, I mean, that's what I said. Like, the Lord loves our kids more than we do. And he will redeem everything and all things in his timing and his way. And sending our kids to public school. Did we make a mistake? I don't know. But we wouldn't do that now, right? And that's kind of where, with the, legacy, when you're thinking about it, what do I want for my grandson that's coming? What do I want for him? And even before we knew we were going to have this grandbaby, it was part of our heart. And we have a huge community of homeschoolers at our church, in our context as well, that we're thinking, how can we better support? And it really kind of came to me through COVID, because I had a lot of parents saying, I don't want what this is being offered. I want, how do I homeschool? This is heavy. This is hard. And so I spent a lot of time with different moms, like trying to give them curriculum and suggestions and things like that. And so this was starting to work in my husband's heart and in my heart. But we had no space for that. We had no space for, pardon? Physical space to make this happen. We're like, yeah, God, okay, I don't know what that looks like. I taught music to K-8 in my little country school. It was amazing. I had the best job. I had the best kids. It was fantastic. I didn't want to give that up, right? It was good. But God was working. He was working. So with our filters, it's really important as we look to define education ourselves so that we can help our community and help the people that we are leading also understand how important it is. C.S. Lewis wrote in The Abolition of Man, we make men without chests and expect of them virtue and enterprise. Basically, we want them to be these productive members of society, but we haven't given them the tools necessarily to think critically and to navigate tricky situations. We want the neutrality of education to do the job for us as parents a lot of the time. And one big question is, what is our aim? Is it job readiness or soul readiness? We were talking a lot to our parents that have their kids in public school, and we're trying to ask these big questions. Be thinking about this, because I promise they are getting an education and it's not neutral in their public school system. I sat down with the system coordinator just under the superintendent, and I was fighting. I was like, listen, I do not feel included in all of these faiths. I feel like I'm supposed to shut up and sit back here, and I'm not supposed to say anything. That's not inclusion. And they just said, well, we need to push the parents. We need to push you. We can't. The parents aren't educated who aren't ready. They don't know what we know. We push to a different worldview. They're ignorant, is what they were saying. And I was like, that was kind of the linchpin for me. I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. But looking back, when we think about the history of education in Canada, even, where did we come from in Canada? We came from Europe, and in England, the church was the school. There was a newspaper editor, Robert Rakes, who was noticing that all the kids who were working, child laborers, were not getting an opportunity to be educated. And the only day that they had in their week that they could come to school was on Sunday. So guess what was born? Sunday school, right? And that's how the church started really being a proponent of education for kids. And it wasn't just the Bible stories, it was how to read and write and do math and that type of thing. And so we're looking at revisiting the role of the church in that very same vein of how do we support our kids? How can we provide something that is engaging and authentic and passionate and with, fervor and with knowledge that will set our kids up to think and be the world changers that we know that the Lord has made them to be and has gifted them. Yeah, over 1.2 million kids attended Sunday school in England by 1830. It's pretty crazy. So I'm an arts person. I like English and composition. So numbers don't mean a lot of things to me. But when I have a visual, it helps, right? The biggest thing I want you to see in all of this is that across the different genres, if you will, the type of different types of schooling we can send our kids to. Faith retention. Would we agree that that's pretty high on our list as Christian parents, right? That's pretty high on my list. If you look at it, how low is the public school system, right? The kids, how are we losing our kids? If we look at our churches and we see our kids growing up and then they go off to school and they walk away from the faith, how common is that? Way too common. And part of that is because of the public's neutral education and how we have been unaware of some of those things. Some of you are trying to look real close. I apologize, the lighting in here isn't awesome. I do have a QR code that you can scan, and I have these notes. Yeah. So I do have a QR code at the end that I'll share with you. The biggest thing that I even find between a homeschool and a church-supported hybrid model, which is what we're going to talk about in more depth in a minute, is that we can use the body to come around our families and support them in ways that being an isolated homeschooling family can use and need and benefit. We can use our retired engineers and science teachers and logic professors and Latin professors if you want to go that way, music geeks. Like, you can do all of those things because you have a body. And when we talked about the space issues that we were having, physical space issues, we'll share that in a minute. I was like, Lord, we can't do that. Like, who in the middle of the day, who is going to be available to teach these classes? That's impossible. Don't say that to God, because he just shows, if the Lord is calling you to something, he's showing us time and time again that he will bring the things that you need to make that possible. So, it's just, what you need to see is, like, this is homeschooling, this is the church support, like, across the board with all of these different surveys, Christian surveys, but also non-Christian surveys, just general surveys. It's clear that our kids are getting a better education when they have that family and community support. So what is education biblically? Some of you said, yes, it's discipleship, right? We know from Ephesians 6:4 that if we bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, we can hope and pray that the Lord will drive them crazy with it. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge, and we are called to teach these truths about our Lord diligently to our children. And I've heard a lot of that echoed in our session this morning. I really like Dorothy Sayers. Has anyone heard of her? She wrote The Lost Tools of Learning, and she's kind of the grandmother of the classical Christian movement. And, I've read a lot from her. She said, the sole true end of education is simply this, to teach men how to learn for themselves. Her big proponent is that we're not just teaching subjects to our children, we're teaching them to grow in their love of learning and how God can use however he's created our kids, because our kids are all so different and unique. We have the mathematicians and we have the poetry, the poets and Bunny. We also have the construction workers, right? And we also have the administrators. Like, how can we in those spaces help our kids to love learning the way that God has made their brains, right? And even in our academy, I'll talk about it in a minute, like, we love liturgy at our church. We send home these report card liturgies that say, just the prayer is like, it's not about my grade that I got on this report card. It's about, did I work for your glory, Lord? Did I use my best effort? Or was I lazy and not do my homework? And really just kind of celebrate those things and allow that to be their discipline. I know not everyone is a fan of Doug Wilson, but he does have some really good things to say about education. And he said, Christian education is not a retreat from the world, but a charge to repair the ruins. And it's an echo back to Isaiah, where he's talking about rebuilding those ancient ruins. And I believe that is the state of our public education system today. So, who should teach our kids? Right? So we believe that the Bible speaks to our parents being the primary disciplers of their children. Now, that doesn't mean if you send them to a private Christian school, you're shirking your responsibility. That doesn't even mean if you send your kids to public school that you're shirking your responsibility. As long as you understand that you are the one that is going to ultimately be responsible for the education and the discipleship that your children have received. So whether that applies to you directly or even how you're thinking about how to communicate this to those that you were leading, we are truly called to teach our kids. And I know I was guilty of this, especially because I worked, right? And I did try to homeschool my oldest child, and I failed miserably. I did it for 1 month. It was terrible. I quit. I still don't, he's 25 now. I almost know something. I almost do. He's getting better. So I felt like a failure. I felt like I could do it. And I was a teacher. It just did not work. And so when we sent our kids to public school, we didn't want to abdicate our role. We were in there. We were on the school councils. We were in the principal's office when we needed to be. And there's a lot of, you'll hear different podcasts and books and authors and things like that, and they'll say, that's not enough. And it's what we did. So whether or not it was enough, I don't know. It's what we did, and the Lord is good, and it's what we had at that moment. So I wanted to be able to support someone like me who was feeling like a failure and my kid who wouldn't listen to me, and have a body, a community of like-minded individuals who love Jesus and love kids and love pouring into them to support someone like me who was like, this is so hard. That's kind of our journey. Yeah.
I just have a question, sorry, about statistics.
Yep.
But did that just mean specifically church, or do the stats look at, like, if you're in a part of a Christian homeschool group?
Yeah, that's included in that.
Okay.
So anything that's
Okay.
that's
And that-
supported
does that
with the
make a
church.
question that people have, like, okay, my church isn't doing it, but I'm part of a
Yeah.
nice Christian homeschool group, or
Yeah, I do have a slide at the end if we get to it, the difference between a co-op and the hybrid model that I'll show you.
okay.
So I'll
Okay,
explain
thanks.
that a little, yeah. So the church's role isn't to take over the parents' role. So when we introduce a hybrid, we're not saying, okay, you can still just throw your kids in our hybrid and you're good. We really, truly want to partner with the families. It's discipleship not just of the children, but it's discipleship of the whole family. And that's not easy. We've just gone through our first year. It's been challenging, and the Lord just keeps us super humble and makes sure. And we just put one foot in front of the other, and we seek to be obedient. But it's a beautiful thing when you see it come together, and you see how the Lord works when we are operating as best we can in His model. So we really seek to equip the families well with the surrounding community that we have. So real quick, what does obedience as calling look like for you personally? So I just want you to think about it for a minute, because this is a big question. What does education in your context, what has God been prompting you with? What does it look like in your church family? Like how is God forming this in your heart? And we don't even talk about it for a second, because sometimes this is super personal. What questions do you still have? So just give you a moment to kind of digest this for a second. So, how many of you are familiar with classical Christian education? Okay, so about just under half. Dorothy Sayers, again, is really kind of attributed with the rise of it again. And it's basically going back to the classics and valuing what has worked in centuries past. Right now, we're all about the quick, the fast, the consumable, the tech, and we don't have children who love to dive into good books like The Lord of the Rings or Narnia or, Tom Sawyer. You get into some of these beautiful pieces of literature. They don't have the capacity or the attention span to dive in. Our boys aren't reading. Right? Our boys, we've discovered, aren't even really going to movies anymore like they used to, because the way that our culture is training their minds is this quick consumer culture that doesn't know how to sit and like enjoy something like once happened. So this is a return to some of those things, but it's also matching the developmental stage of children with the academic output or focus or instruction philosophy. So in the grammar stage with K to 6, they just, those sponges that our kids are, they just soak it all in. It's really focusing on that in our instruction model, and we do a lot of memory work and a lot of songs. It's fantastic, and you just I can't believe the memories of some of these kids. And it also just builds that knowledge foundation. When I was in public school, we had all of these in-service trainings. It's like, okay, but you need to teach them to ask why, the critical thinking moment when they're in kindergarten. They don't know why. and it's just missing their developmental stage. The next stage is the logic stage, and how many of you have experience with grades 6 to 9 age preteen, teen kids? Anybody? They love why. They love that. And, we've seen them in the logic class this year. It's been quite interesting watching their brains just kind of apply their whys to some of these principles and these fallacies and things like that. They love to question and argue. We begin to debate and that type of thing, and we teach them how to do that well because they don't know yet. And then the rhetoric stage, this is the grade 10 to 12, and that's about your communication. It's about teaching them how to have an argument with someone without being rude or defensive, but able to openly converse and to challenge ideas because they have had that foundational knowledge. They've learned to ask why. They can look at, this is a current debate in our school right now, six-day creationist versus theistic evolution. They can look at those things and say why I believe that. Well, some people believe it this way, but some people believe this, but they can articulate that well. With our social media culture, that's not normal, right? That's not what our classes are training them. I have a friend who is a grade 11 teacher in one of our high schools, and she says she doesn't even teach her class, her grade 11 English university class, how to write an essay because they're just going to chat GPT it. So they don't even get that. But what's happening in post-secondary is they're not allowed to use any AI. Actually, they question your salvation if you're at a Christian school if you use AI to even create an outline. And all of their exams, you have to write them with a pen and paper, right? And so there's some disconnects that happen all the time. So some of the key benefits is that it develops complete thinkers who can learn things in their way. Right? So I know that the Lord has made our brains also different and our kids also unique, but it teaches them how they can learn. It aligns with their cognitive development stages, and it integrates subjects around core truths. We build that biblical worldview in there. And it's not just an out-of-context slap, right? It builds it in and it weaves it in. And it also equips our students to engage culture with discernment. So it brings us to, any questions about before I share our model and what we've done? Because that, I'll try not to talk too much about that. I can talk about it a long time. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Yeah.
My husband, currently working in the education system, had a staff meeting not that long ago where they were telling how they needed to teach children how to think, and that was the focus. But that seems to be a recurring problem, is that we're teaching kids how to think instead of what to think. And so there was a school over in the UK that had been teaching kids what to think, and it was a very structured environment, and they were having great success in their learning. And so it's interesting to me to see Dorothy Sayers' take on that versus what we know, as Christians, we should be teaching them what to think, and screw your faith to the sticking point, and then all else should be rotating.
Then we can get to that.
So it's interesting to see
how that pulls out. Yeah, because she's saying they need to know the foundation. Without that foundation, we're sinking sand. We're the house built on the sand, right? And that's what we're seeing with our kids who are growing up and leaving the faith because they don't have that rock solid foundation. So a little bit about, thank you. That was good. A little bit about our story. So I mentioned that the Lord was really stirring in our hearts that we needed to do something, that we needed to be supporting our homeschooling community better. And I don't know if any of you know families like this, or maybe your family like this, we would have loved to have sent our kids to private school as our kids got older and we were seeing all these things happen, but it was financially not doable. Right? We've got a couple of really great Christian schools in our area, but it's very expensive for many people. And so if their choice was, I can't homeschool because I have to work, or I can't afford to send my kids to private school. So my only option is try to get the best public school I can and be as involved as I can. So we were thinking, that's not okay. We have to figure something out. So 2 years ago, we started something called Ready, Set, Go. I took a half-time leave from my full-time job, and we prayed as a team, and we decided, okay, we're going to create something that I didn't know existed. We just dipped our toe in the waters, literally what I said. Let's dip our toe in the water and see what happens. So we created an educational day camp that was once a month for all of our homeschooling community. So even outside of our church, we opened it up to our community at large. And we had around 100 kids that came at that time, and we offered a morning workshop for all of the parents, so moms and dads included, where they got to, we'd had like little mini sessions for them where they could share and they can talk and just kind of get some resources and just be encouraged, and we pray over them. That was it was fabulous, actually, just seeing all those connections being made. It was probably one of the hardest things we had done at that point. That day was a big day, so Dav here, she's part of it as well, and that was crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. But the kids had a blast. They looked forward to it every month. It was not a sustainable thing for us at that time because we used about 40 volunteers on that Monday, and it was during a school day. It was our staff's day off, so the staff that was there were giving their day off to come and help, and yeah, I was still working half time. It was just a lot. And so we knew that that wasn't a sustainable thing. But what it did, it gave us a lot of research, because in those morning sessions with those parents, I was asking them questions. I was saying, what is the best thing about your homeschooling? What is the hardest? What curriculum do you enjoy using? What curriculum do you not enjoy using? What is the biggest struggle at home when you're with your kids? What do you wish you had more training in? So it was just all these questions that I was collecting over that 9 months time, and that began to put together a framework for an academy, which is what we have now, which is called Blue Water Go Homeschool Academy. So it turned into a 1 day a week, 4 at-home day model, and that's what we call our homeschool hybrid. So our 4 at-home days, it's very similar to, has anyone heard of SCOLE, the SCOLE learning communities? So we have friends that are out west, and we were talking to them about this. We're like, oh, that's like SCOLE, we do that. And so Tim and I, we flew over there, and we had to go check it out and ask all kinds of questions, and it seemed fabulous. So, and we've done a couple of other trips like that around Canada, around Ontario, just to see what it looked like in Ontario, because out west they have tax dollars that can pay for that. That's amazing. Not here. So we definitely did some research, and we really, just brought it to the Lord, but we still didn't have a physical space. And then, do you want to speak to that? Yeah, go ahead, because this is your part. Go ahead.
Okay, so, don't need to give you too many details. There was we have a small building for our church. There was a United Church of Canada church that had closed their doors, and we happened to find out about it. We were looking through this old building, and they had this hallway downstairs that kind of comes out of nowhere with 7 classrooms. And we're like, wow. So we got kind of worked a deal with the United Church of Canada where they leased us this building for like $1 a year, and it enabled us to be able to have this program here.
Yeah, it was just way of the Lord. And so it was like those things that felt so impossible at the time. He's just one step at a time kind of leading to that. And I did officially just resign from my job last week. So I was on a full leave of absence, yeah, with a very interesting note to the director of education. Yes. But it's just what the Lord has been really just brewing in our heart, in our family's heart, and our church's heart. We've got so many amazing invested staff there as well. So again, it's a 1 day a week, 4 days at home. Now we also offer something called hybrid help. In hybrid help, we have 2 models. We have a drop-in and a drop-off. So the drop off is a paid service for families that work or for single moms or things like that, that they can't not work, and so they have to have someone else helping them school their child. And so right now I'm doing that because we're, it's like a startup, it's like a church plant, right? It's just like it's a school plant. And so I have one little guy that comes every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we get his schoolwork done. It's just like a half-day work load, and he's done. And then we also have drop-ins where we have families that are like, this is awesome. We can just come in and take over a classroom and do school here instead of at home where I'm distracted or my kids are distracted, and they can do science experiments with their friends. Okay, and we can make the mess here, and I have stuff for days. So it's been really neat to see those families connect, and then all of a sudden it feels more like a co-op or things like that because they're able to come, and that's just free for them to use whenever they need that. And it's been really encouraging because I don't know of how many of you guys find this if you're homeschooling families where it's just really hard to stay on task at home. It's easy to get distracted. I know everyone's a little bit different in how they do that, but that's definitely something that we felt. So we use the classical trivium framework. We're working on it. It's something that I feel like from all my research that I've done with different schools, developing classical educators is a long goal. It's a long goal. And I've had to reprogram my training as a teacher to understand how this works. And I'm fascinated by it, and I love it. And now my goal as the director and the principal is to help pass that on to our staff. I hope I'm doing that not too bad. We're trying. It's going to take time. It's not going to be something that they're all amazing classical educators by year 2. It's a 5-year goal as we're getting closer and closer. And we are focusing on the critical thinking as they're getting older. Obviously providing that knowledge base first, but then getting them into that space. And that whole biblical worldview across all of the subjects. Someone asked me, what's different about your homeschool hybrid and just sending them to Christian school? And I said, well, if you think of Christian school, it's like that umbrella, like that covering of Christianity, and it's usually in their mission statement and things like that, you've got that covering. With our homeschool hybrid, it's like woven into each subject and curriculum and what we do. Community benefits. So DAF actually is our Bible teacher. We call them tutors because we are trying to communicate the idea that the parents are the teachers, right? The parents are the educators. We're support staff. So we call ourselves tutors. But DAF also does community connection. And DAF, can I give you a couple minutes just to give, I didn't tell her this, that I was going to do this.
Okay. Yeah, like in a nutshell, so what our other passion is that we don't believe, or I definitely don't believe that kids have to wait to grow up or become teenagers to start actually sharing the love of Jesus and the light of Christ in their community. So one of the great opportunities is that this academy gives space for the kids to do outreach projects to our community. So it could be something as simple as nursing home visits to working with the community garden to
Firefighters.
Oh yeah, firefighters, you name it, but we always make sure that there's evangelistic aspects to it and talk about using your time, your talents, your treasure for the glory of God. And it's cute to get the kids thinking, what can I do when I'm not a moneymaker in the house? What can I still use my talents for? And so it's been, we're hoping to do some long-term connections with everyone we're reaching out to. It's not meant to be a one-off kind of, oh, we're nice to you, walk away. Like I'm hoping to see growth over the years, but the kids have really enjoyed that action piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because my heart is still salt and light, right? We're still wanting to make an impact. We don't want to hide from the world. We want to, where we're at developmentally, where we're at spiritually, we want to be able to show what Jesus has done for us, right? Bringing the firefighters in, they were just so touched that our kids were just so excited about them being superheroes, and they made them cookies. It was really
Talk about their sacrifice.
their sacrifice, how they remind them of Jesus because they lay down their life so that we can be safe. And so it's just, that is our heart, and that's something that makes us a little bit different in that venue, is that we are very intentional about reaching out. We're not just trying to hide away. So one thing I just want to show you real quick is I'm going to let you hear from our parents, right? I'll just let you hear from some of our parents. hopefully it'll work here. Let's see. It'll load. There's some of our kids. That's what the firefighters that day. Here we go. Here, you can pass these out while we're waiting for it to load. Maybe. Does anyone have any questions while we're waiting for that to load? So you said you had about 12 families? Who mentioned that? Yeah. So that's actually what we started with. Yeah. So that was just our last year's 12. Our early bird date is for registration ends tomorrow. And we have 3 open spots with doubling our current enrollment. So we went from 30 kids to 60. And do you want to know who all those kids are for the most part? Our families from our Ready, Set, Go, our day camp that have come on board. So yeah, that was tough slugging, and it was a lot, but the Lord used that to build that foundation and that relationship and those connections to bring them more on board. We intentionally keep our classes very small. I have some at 10, which I find is going to be a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, so I'm almost ready to close it, and we were open till June 1st with our enrollment. So yeah.
What do you do? So Mondays is your school day?
Yeah.
What do you do on a Monday? Like what subjects? Like what?
Sure.
What's your day like?
So I actually have a bunch of our material back at the corner there, and that will help too if you want to take any to take it off, take them home. So our Monday looks like this currently. 8:30 is when we start, and for homeschooling families, they're like, yeah. But they do it. And so we start at 8:30. We have chapel. So our Austin and Rachel, who are part of Backyard Worship, they lead our chapel, and they do missiology. We have catechism. So Pastor Tim does catechism in kid language, and it's great. They love it. And we do, did I say missiology? Yeah, so we have like a spot where we talk about different missionaries around the world. We have Community Connect, so Daph will come up and she'll share whatever we're kind of working on or things to do that. What am I missing? That's pretty much, recitations. So we think it's so important that our kids get comfortable sharing in front of people. So our kids from preschool all the way up to grade 8 share recitation. We encourage at least one a year. And so some of it will be the Pirates Who Don't Do Anything. We had a little 3-year-old sing that for us. It was amazing. To Shark Facts from a 5-year-old. That was awesome. To memorizing full passages of scripture like 1 Corinthians 13. To sharing a story they wrote. So it's just been really cool to see them. And of course, when they start to do it, then the other kids want to sign up and do it, and that's pretty neat. So that's our chapel. It's a half an hour. And then we break up into all of our different age groups. So we've got preschool, that's 18 months to 3, that we just do a half a day. And then we have kindergarten, which is 4 and 5-year-olds. And then we do a 1-2 class. We didn't have any grade 3s this year, so we had a grade 4-5 class. And then we had a 7-8 class this year. And so our tutors, each tutor did a different subject. So we did math, science, language, Bible, history, gym. They love gym. And the arts. And there's like, that's language. Yeah, that's language. And logic for just the 7-8. Yes? Sorry?
Is it just families in your church? Or do you
No, we have other families as well. Yeah.
I was going to say, because that was
Yeah. No, and actually, well, we do have some large families with 6 kids that certainly help those numbers. But no, it's from the larger homeschooling community, faith-based community. But yeah, that we brought in. I know, so it's crazy. Yeah, we do have a couple of large families that definitely doesn't take much. You get 2 of those big ones, and it's like good. Yeah.
And one more, and your peer tutors, or your tutors?
Yes.
Are parents?
So some of them are.
Some of them are parents of, like, so their kids come, but they're, okay, tutor, or they are church people?
Yes.
Okay, volunteers.
Yeah, so we have a retired science teacher that does all of our science right now, and he's fantastic. And we have an engineer who was a stay-at-home mom, and she was like, I don't know what the Lord wants from me. And I said, I know. And she's doing a fantastic job. Tim, he gives up his day off and he teaches logic. Daph does Bible and Community Connect. I teach language with my dad. So my dad drives 8 hours to come and help. He's retired too. And he's like, what else am I going to do? I'm going to help my daughter. And he loves the kids and they love him. It's been fantastic. So he comes every other week and we tag team it. Austin, we get him to do stuff because, he's the youth pastor. We can make him do stuff. He does gym and stuff like that. Arts, I do the arts for the most part, and Rachel, she does our kindergarten program. I'm just in the middle of hiring right now, and it's bigger, obviously, now. And so I'm like, whew, it's a whole new world for me. I'm not used to this part of it, and just learning how to discerningly and prayerfully seek the Lord and who we let in. That sounds elitist, but just like who you want and who our parents can trust to partner with them in the educational process. So, I've got moms on mat leave that are coming in to help out. It's pretty much, you can source them outside of your church, but you need to be a lot more intentional about that research piece and the prayer piece and things like that. Yeah.
Just while we're waiting for this to load, at the risk of repeating stuff, we really felt as a church that the next big thing for churches was going to be educating, how to educate our kids. So at one point, the big thing for churches were buses, right? All the churches were trying to buy buses and drive around and pick kids up. At one point, the big thing for churches were drums. There's always been, right, the next big thing for churches. I really, really think that we really think that this education piece is the thing that is going to be the next big thing for churches as the public system gets less and less as an option. It's less and less of an option for families that genuinely don't want to lose their kids. I always get in trouble every time I say this, but the public education system is failing in every single area. I don't think that there's a single metric that we can say the public system is successful. Okay, now people always get mad at me, and I'm not saying that there's not good educators. There are very good educators. But very briefly, since 2003, there's a big study done by the Fraser Institute. Since 2003, math scores in public education in Ontario fell by 35 points in over 20 years, which what does that mean? 20 points is a grade level. So since 2003, when math scores were already falling, math scores are 2 grade levels down. Literature is almost a full grade level down since 2003. So more and more money is being poured into public education, and results are just worse and worse and worse. I think what we decided was the only thing that the public education system is actually successful at is discipling kids away from the faith. That's the only thing that they actually do well. And again, I'm not taking shots at educators. There are some awesome educators that are doing the Lord's work in that system. But when we looked at this, we looked at different models. Okay, what are families going to do? Are they going to send their kids to Christian schools? Well, that's an option. And not every Christian school is created equal. I know where we are. There's a couple of Christian schools, and they're not the same. One of them uses the public health curriculum to teach sexuality and whatnot. So it's what are we doing? Are parents going to homeschool? Well, that has its own set of challenges, right? So the reason why we ended up at this particular model is because this was a door number 3, and we're not wanting to throw out, or we're not wanting to throw shade on any other model. This is just what we found worked for us. So I hope you're not hearing us as saying hey, any other options are bad, because that's not what we're trying to do.
And this is just a model, right? And it's just what's worked in our context. So I hope that you hear that there are a lot of different ways that you can come at this depending on your context, right? And it's just setting it up in a way that will work for your families. And doing the work of the research beforehand, and whatever that looks like, maybe it's just a drop-in where you're starting to make connections. just providing that and make it open to the larger community. Maybe that's where it starts. One of our churches in our city did that as well, where they just had like a gym day where they invited all of the families in and they talked about that. I'm going to go ahead and skip over that video. It's not loading. I apologize. You'll have access to all of that if you want with the QR code. Our families have just truly been an incredible blessing to us. And we've just fallen in love with their kids in ways that we didn't know possible. But it has not been easy. Don't hear me saying that. It is a labor of love. The spiritual attack has been out of the sight. It's definitely been war. We just had someone sign on to be our admin assistant for next year, and as soon as she signed the contract, a health issue that she had 3 years ago that had her in hospital for 5 months hit. She was like, I know this is not an accident. Just be very, just kind of aware and just pray through that. The Lord will give you wisdom and discernment in moving forward and what to be aware of. So, I'm going to skip this for now, and I think you kind of know that. Here's some of the research that I've done, some books that I would recommend to you if you're interested. For the historical background, there are 2 books that I've looked at, Education in Canada and Development of Education in Canada. They're textbooks, they're not easy reads, but if you're interested and curious as how the public system has gotten to where it is today, they're really good to get into, and you can chat GPT it and say, summarize this for me if you want. You can do that, yeah. I found it helpful and just reminding me where I was educated. I'm an American, so I grew up in the States, so even my education was a little bit different than what I have here. So it was just good for me to understand it from a Canadian perspective. The Lost of Learning is Dorothy Sayers, where she has that foundational essay. C.S. Lewis is always good, The Abolition of Man. Doug Wilson, Repairing the Ruins, so he's an editor, so there's a lot of different small, bite-sized essays in that work that speak to the educational crisis that we're in today, about all the different places and spaces where we've let down our kids publicly. Dear parents, so Tom Garfield is the principal at Logos School in Moscow, Idaho, and he has decades of experience leading a school. So it's different than our context because it's a 5-day school, but it's fantastic if you're looking how to communicate a classical vision to families, because it's hard. Classical education is rigorous. And I found with our families that we have, so we had kids coming from public school to our hybrid. We had kids coming from Christian school, and we also had kids who've only ever been homeschooled. And each group had a different challenge. But the biggest one all around is the rigor, in every context, is that they're not all used to working intentionally for a long period of time. And having said that, they don't have to sit and write for 3 hours. It's nothing like that. It's just that this is a different kind of intentionality with it. And we didn't even start, so classical education curriculum, we use a lot of classical academic press. I have a curriculum guide at the back too if anyone's interested in seeing what we use. But I love the classical academic press books, not all of them, but certain ones of them. And I don't know, is anyone familiar with writing and rhetoric or well-ordered language? So we started our grade 7 and 8s with the year 2 because they need it. And we don't say, oh, you guys get the grade 4 curriculum, nothing like that. It's just, let's build where we are and build that. So even though we're classical, some classical education gurus say, oh, VeggieTales, that's sacrilegious. I'm not that classical. I don't understand. And starting as a blue-collar town, we're not trying to create snobs, and that's sometimes the criticism of classical, that it's just hoity-toity intellectualism. No, we want them to love learning and to dig into these really rich works, and we don't want dumb kids. Yeah, so knowing what they believe and why. So dear parents, so that book is excellent in how to communicate that vision to families. And then putting feet on the trivium. So that was amazing for me, the Classical Administrator's Handbook, because I've only ever been a teacher. I never, ever wanted to be an administrator. Never. I love the kids. I just want to teach. He told me I can't teach so much this next year. And I'm like, oh. But that's been really good and helpful for me to understand what my role is and how I can support the community, the families, the students, the staff. And also Christopher Perrin, he's connected with Classical Academic Press. He's got great resources, but one of them is an introductory guide to classical education as a whole, just kind of things to look at. And again, I do have this QR code coming up here. So a lot of questions I get is, what's the difference between a co-op and this hybrid thing that you're talking about? And so co-ops can look different depending on your context and where you are. So this is the generic vision, and some of you might have some things to share about what yours might look like, but it's often parent-led. Get a group of families together and they say, okay, let's do this thing. We're going to set a date, a month, or every other week or something. It's often flexible in scheduling, and it's usually enrichment focused. So we're kind of doing something like that. We have symposium days. That's a non-school day where we do fun learning that's outside of our normal learning day. So we're doing a STEAM day in a few weeks where it's all like science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We're doing coding, and we're doing robotics and engineering and 3D printing and that kind of thing, and we make that open to our families first, and then we open it up to the larger community. But that's that kind of idea. And it's often very curriculum. There's not a streamlined goal. Often it's more of like, hey, I need someone to do art, or I need someone to do science. Can we switch? And it's often very minimally financially costing you something. It just doesn't usually cost a lot of money to do that. Benefits, for sure. It's community driven, and it has a lot of flexibility, which is great for homeschooling families. The church-supported hybrid, the BGHA model, our Blue Water Go Homeschool Academy model, is we're providing a professional oversight. So we are creating portfolios for each student and transcripts and report cards so that it travels with them wherever they go, so that they are in grade 8 and they want to go to grade 9 high school next year. They have a legit thorough working out of everything that they've learned, how they scored, and that type of thing, which has been really helpful. We do use our classical curriculum, and we have intentional formation. So we are working, again, that discipleship of the kids and working with the families to meet them where they are. We have consistent standards across, which a lot of the families that we have, they're all coming back, praise the Lord. And they're just saying the accountability has been unbelievable, what it's done for my kids. Just that extra adult or 3 adults, and they love having other Jesus-loving adults and passionate individuals about their subjects pour into their kids. It's hard. We can't do it all. It's hard to be mom and teacher and housewife and cook. It's hard. And it just helps kind of shoulder that a little bit. And it also allows us to use our church resources, our facilities, janitorial, like all those types of things. We get to benefit from being within our church spot. Oh, that's my 1 hour mark, guys. So, make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Okay, so where do we go from here? So, as a parent, what assumptions about education do we need to challenge? Am I delegating discipleship, or is that my primary role? Maybe as an educator, how am I balancing academics with spiritual formation? Am I teaching subjects or teaching thinking? As a church leader, how can our church partner in forming disciples? What resources can we offer families? Or even just as a church member, how can I support families in educational discipleship? What gifts can I contribute? So when my kids were little, we had a lot of friends that homeschooled. I still did it. But you know what I would do is I would supply teach for her. So I would go in and I would give her a break, and I would just go school her kids. I was like, this is so hard. I don't know how you do this all the time. Let me see if I can make this bigger. How's that? Is that better? So, just some things to consider that way. And what does obedience look like? Each family's journey is going to be unique, but biblical principles remain constant. Consider what steps you could take. Praying for wisdom. It's an everyday thing right now. I just feel like I'm desperate for it. I constantly put in situations I never dreamed of, and it's not knowing what to do. Like, the Lord's been faithful in that. You got to be a student yourself and be willing to put the time in to do some research. And then study scriptures to see where's the Lord leading you. And then connect with others. Get a group, right? there's no way we could do this by ourselves. Yeah. So how many? We have 12 on staff, I think. It's definitely a team effort, and it's been incredible. And then take steps, right? We didn't just sit with it. The Lord said, "Why don't you try this?" And we're like, "Okay." And we learn as we go. So yeah, absolutely. Talk to us. We have some stuff back there. If you have any other questions, I'll just open it up now for some questions if you have any more. Yeah. Caitlin?
Are you keeping it to just Christian families or?
So we have in our handbook, and I have a copy back there if anyone wants to see it, and there's some QR codes too if you want it digitally. We do allow non-Christian families to come in, but they have to sign off on all of our faith statements and things like that. But we don't have any right now. Yeah.
I have a question about curriculum.
Yeah.
So then, if a homeschool family steps into this, then they use the curriculum that you guys are walking through? Okay.
So that has been a challenge.
Yeah.
And so
No,
that's
for sure.
that's the biggest hurdle I find for the homeschooling families to enter in, because they're like, oh, I have to give that up, and I get it because it's either really worked for your kids and what you're doing or that type of thing. One of the things that we didn't do well at the beginning was provide all of our moms and dads with the teacher's guides.
Oh.
And so I learned quick, you got to make sure they have all the tools,
Yeah.
right? Because they are the 4 days at home with them and they need all the teacher's guides. And so I'm learning how to do that cheaply, like thriftbooks.com. If you can get them sent to the States, it's amazing. Digital copies.
Like cost-wise then?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah.
So our church has been very generous in giving us some money to set it up, right? So they pay me a little bit, and we're able to pay our tutors a little bit. And then it doesn't really break even yet. Our church is carrying us for I think we have a 5-year kind of goal to be self-sustaining within 5 years. And so we do offer our Blue Water members, like our Blue Water Church members, a discounted rate. So because they're already tithing and giving in all kinds of other ways with our facilities and our building and our extra offerings and things like that. So it's our way to not ask them for more because they're already contributing in other ways. And then we do have a non-Blue Water tender rate. Now our families that all jumped on board with this crazy vision and with us, we give a founding family rate for second year, and it's like significant. It's because I'm like, you guys, you trusted us, and you were our guinea pigs. You think you're amazing. Let's bless you, because we wouldn't have a school without them. So that's something that we've done.
So our program costs about 1/5 what a private Christian school is.
Okay.
So what is that? What do you guys charge for?
So this year, I'm gonna go look. Numbers aren't my thing. So this first year we weren't able to offer a family rate, which was a game changer for a lot of families. But we just needed to get off the ground and be able to function without going in the red. So for our half-day program, we call it our Tykes program. It's $550 normally, and we do have an early bird rate that's a little bit less. Our kindergarten program all the way through, and next year we are opening up to grade 9, and that's a whole nother workshop, and how to do that as a non-inspected private school. We are not seeking accreditation. We want nothing to do with that, but we are very intentional about setting all our students up for success, whatever post-secondary pathway. We've got some really neat connections in the community to help us do that well. But every year our goal is to open up one more year. So grade 9 next year, grade 10. And we have 4 grade 9s enrolled already, which is fabulous. And yeah, $21.50 is our regular rate for the year. And then our curriculum is on top of that. And I can get it usually to be around $500 for all of it. I work really hard at curating and thrifting and for those families. And then we do have some of our subjects are family curriculums. So our Bible curriculum, we use God's Great Covenant from CAP, from Classical Academic Press. We also are using next year the Curious Historian, which also is a family curriculum where you can have multiple entry points for different age. And our families love that because they're not trying to okay, you stay here and I'll go to this over here, right? It's a little bit easier that way. We use, a whole curriculum guide back there, but we use Noeo Science, which has been fabulous. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's relatively new. It's through Canon Press. It's all experiment-based. So to do that at hybrid help with me is wonderful. It's very stressful if parents feel like they have to do that at home. So we try to do that as much as we can on our class day.
For the curriculum piece, the families that have homeschooled really weren't super excited about us curating the curriculum, but it's a huge barrier for families that are wanting to get out of the public system.
Yes.
Like, where do I even start? So,
Yeah.
so for some it hasn't been the biggest draw, but for others it's been like really helpful to have someone who's awesome curate awesome curriculum.
Yeah.
So.
And also, you're less, just so you know, you're less than the Christian school that we have locally, you're less than 1/5 of us.
Okay.
Just so, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do like a deposit, a non-refundable deposit that's $250 per family. That just takes care of some of my time to do. We do family intakes and things like that because we want to make sure, and we reserve the right at any point to say this isn't going to be good. If I miss it, that this might not be a good fit. One of the things that was recommended to me by another principal that does something similar in another city, she said, give them something to do that's hard and watch the families react. It's so funny. So what she did was she gave, it was like a 10-year-old, a piece of paper and said, write your name. And they started to write their name. She's like, no, in cursive. And all of a sudden the kid was like, and then the mom's like, oh, let me do that for you. I didn't teach them that yet. And then she's like, okay, this is telling, like, we can do hard things. We need to give some space a little bit here so we can let this child struggle just a little and figure some stuff out. So that's been in my head. So that's part of our intake. We do a language intake, and we do a math intake. And I just talk to them, and I let them play a little bit, and I just kind of see how they are socially, and we just kind of get a good read on the family, and we let them ask us any questions, and they have the right to pull the plug at any time. But once they pay that deposit, it does stay in our account. But it is just one a year per family. Any other questions?
This might not be as relevant now, but when in our church we were talking about maybe having a homeschool group or co-op in our church, because there were a lot of homeschoolers. There were lots of public schoolers as well. And so we ended up feeling that we ought not to do that, just encourage them to go to other local homeschoolers because of unity. Because it would just have created like a clique. It's not the same thing as what you're doing.
No.
But like there were like those who do and those who don't, and we kind of wanted like unity among our congregants. But I feel like now most of everyone is finding some way to have Christian education for their kids because of what has happened in this public school system. But like, how's that? Is that a factor?
I would suggest that your church maybe said no to that. I'd be willing to bet that a bunch of those families just went ahead and did it anyway. So like,
Oh, we
so
had our days when we'd get together for
yeah.
sure. But,
So it probably just happened, just not in the church. So
but like as it wasn't an official church program, is what I mean, because our leadership wasn't necessarily where you guys are at, where it was coming from the church leaders that we need to do this to disciple everyone. You know what I'm saying?
and
It
the
was
church probably lost something
It was more
because it
organic.
wasn't there,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah, because the one we have in our church is run through the Cambridge Christian homeschoolers who use the church space. So like the
Still local
whole,
Christian groups.
yeah, 'cause like
Just
the
not in
whole-
our
Yeah,
church.
yeah.
the whole of Cambridge Christian homeschoolers have 180 families.
Yeah.
And like our co-op is 40 of those families.
can you talk really briefly about like homeschoolers that just is
Well,
for them?
Yeah, so one of the things that was recommended to me when we started researching and I started spending some time with other people that have done the similar things throughout Canada was that decide who you're going to be and stick to it. So are you going to be the place for lost puppies, right? Are you going to be the place for where school just does not work for them? Because if you are, then just be that. But if you're going to be the place that you expect a certain behavior standard and a certain family value and things like that, be that and don't be ashamed about it. And you have to be willing to stand up and say courageously, like, this isn't for you, this isn't going to be a good fit. And as a private school, we can do that, right? And so, and even some of our wrestling a little bit with some of the different issues, because let me tell you this, it's not a perfect place. We've had some big issues, and this tiny little thing blew my mind. I was like, what? Yeah, it's been a thing, but it's been really good, and you just decide who you're going to be. So we have to think about not letting a certain family of kids come back next year, and they're key in our church, and so there's that piece of it, right? So I could talk about that for a while, yeah, you church with them, then you school with them, and you work with them. Like there's those issues too, but God is good and He's gracious and He's sanctifying all of us in it. It's like that discipleship, and we are not exempt from being sanctified too in it all. But yeah, decide who you're going to be collectively and set your mission and go. But yeah, I'm here if anybody wants to talk further, check out any of our materials. Yeah.